Sorry about that. That's okay.
That's
I
all
don't
right.
think mine were very meaningful or substantive.
You had some being recorded. I'd like to call the meeting to order. That's the first time we've done this face to face in so long. It's exciting. We have no preamble to read this time. Those of you who are frequent attendees, we're going to skip right over that part. And we'll go right to establishing a quorum. Let me go around the table here, starting with Trevor, and ask everybody to identify themselves.
Trevor Henry, Deputy County Executive.
Bill Fritz, Development Process Manager.
Jim Andrews, Samuel Miller, District Representative of the Board of Supervisors.
Bucky Walsh.
Waldo Jacob.
Thank you all very much for being here. Supervisor Price has already notified us that she would not be able to attend this evening. However, we have 5 members present, so we do have a quorum. That takes us to our next order of business, which is the approval of the agenda. I trust everyone has received a copy.
Sure.
Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Can we move forward with this agenda?
So we,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is the agenda. Very good. So we got the opportunity here for brief announcements by authority members. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? Very good. That takes us to our public comment phase. I trust we have folks online as well as here in the room. At this point in time, if you're online and you'd like to speak, please either raise your hand or hit star 9 to indicate that you'd like to speak. You can have 3 minutes to speak to the authority, and anyone here in the room care to speak, just raise your hand, let us know.
we've got. Press.
Come on, step forward, stand up, tell us your name and the magisterial district that you live in, if you know.
Press now, and I am in Samuel Miller. And I don't know if I'm even in the right place for this, but I'm just been trying to find more information about the schedule of rolling out service in different parts of the county. The farm that I work at in Southern Albemarle has several families living on it, and they're dying to find out when we're going to get internet. And I've tried to look through the website and see what I can determine. And I'm only seeing just sort of the Vegas by the end of 2023 kind of things, and was hoping that I might get some direction on further scheduling.
It'd be great if you could type in your address somewhere and it could say, here's the plan for you.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Just throwing it
There's
out
a map
there.
that has, you probably,
Yeah.
it's through Firefly, I guess, or
Mhm.
it's very hard to use, but anyway, and it's
Are-
also non-specific, so.
Are you covered in the body 2022 program? Are you in the,
No, well, no, Rise.
you're in the RISE project?
Yeah.
Okay, we got a 3-year time horizon on RISE. My house is in RISE.
Uh-huh.
I don't know when I'm going to get my service.
Okay,
I'm sorry you don't know either, because I'd like both of us to have a date we can pin our hopes on.
okay,
But they're at the early stages of their contract. They're doing their engineering studies, and their plan is to be able to notify folks 6 months in advance of when they're going to be coming to their area
okay.
to hook them up so people can get ready then. So I don't think anybody's getting their 6 months notice yet, because they're finishing doing the engineering. To get started on this kind of project, there's an awful lot of what they call make ready work that's necessary. So you got a lot of telephone poles that you're going to be stringing wires on. Well, where you string the fiber cable on those telephone poles, if it's not high enough as it crosses the street, you got to replace both those poles. And then that happens at a lot of time. I mean, 1 in 10, 2 in 10 poles, a lot of poles get replaced as this sort of thing. Not to mention trenching and other things where you're going to go underground. So there's a lot of engineering that goes on before they start spooling cable off the trucks. And they've been working on that, but there's more to do, because they're hooking up 36,000 people in this go round, or 35,000 people in this go round.
Yeah.
So as soon as they get that plan baked, they'll publish it on the RISE website. And like I said, you should get a notice within 6 months of when they're actually coming to your area specifically. And as they go forward in the project, I don't doubt that they'll be you'll have the wet year, the dry year, you'll have all kinds of weather, and that'll never seems to speed things up. It only ever seems to slow things down. So, but I'm right there with you. I'd like to know.
Okay, all right, well, yeah.
And I think we just got the contract signed with them like a month ago, right?
2 months ago.
2 months ago. So although they were generous in starting their work prior to actually having an agreement with us, it really did just start regrettably, and it'll be years of work.
Okay. And do you know what it means on that map if it says survey, regional fiber proposed project area?
We're happy to discuss it offline.
Yeah, I think that would be,
and,
She'll let you follow up with Mike Culp.
yeah, BAAO@albemarle.org.
Okay.
And stick around, we'll be discussing that project shortly.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, we have one caller with her hand up.
Great. Could you bring them forward?
All right. Ms. Vermillion, if you'd like to go ahead. State your
Yes.
magisterial district.
My magisterial district is Ravenna. And I appreciate your taking some comments from me. I appreciate your holding this meeting, actually. My question is that we live in the Pantops area, I guess, in a subdivision called Franklin that doesn't have that many folks in it. But the way our property is structured is we have a driveway that's probably about 200 feet. And anyway, we were using Beam, which was a provider that had come in, I guess, and they beam the signal, off of a tower somewhere and beam it back to you. But and it was working very well. But just recently we got a notice that they are pulling out of this area because they are being impacted by some of the larger, I guess, broadband providers like Ting and Firefly, and that they just can't, they can't make it sustainable. My question is that Ting has provided lines to the Cascadia subdivision that is maybe less than, probably less than half a mile up the road from us. But when I talked with them, they had no plans apparently to go any further or to bring their lines any further. And I just wondered what kind of options we might have. I mean, it would cost us, we tried to get Xfinity, but it was going to cost $10,000 to run it down the driveway. And CenturyLink, I hate to say it, but I work from home quite a bit and need the VPN, and it was not reliable. So there aren't that many options. I just wondered if you all had any idea about the whole Ting project, and if there was any sway that the county has at all in asking them to, well, provide lines that might benefit more than just the Cascadia development.
We have spoken with Ting in the past about providing service in various regions in the county, and they have a very carefully constructed plan that they are following for addressing needs where they see them. Their focus is primarily on higher density population areas because of the costs associated with running their fiber. And so I don't know if we have any sway there or not. On the other hand, we are working with providers at this time to look at places that used to have broadband but don't anymore, either because the definition changed or because Chantel Beam just went away. And we'll be looking to bring services to those areas, but I don't have a plan for you today. The way to follow up is with the BAAO.org.
Albemarle.org. Yep.
At BAAO@albemarle.org address. Those folks can keep you apprised of what other choices might be available in your area, and make sure that we get you on our map of places that need service.
Okay.
I just want to add that we are, this is something that staff has been working on recently. We are, sorry, as I'm talking, I realize I don't even know where to look. This is very weird. This is this is our first remote, Debbie, this is our first meeting like this that have mixed up in person and people remote. We are acutely aware, because staff has been great about bringing this to our attention, that we have been working on solving the problem of rural broadband, but it has left this sort of a donut around the city of folks who theoretically are served as you're theoretically served by Comcast, but who actually may not be served for the same reason that you chose not to continue having service with CenturyLink. That is something that we are looking at. I think we'll be talking about some during this meeting. We'll be talking about during future meetings as well, because we hear you. It really is a problem that on paper you have broadband options, but in practice you don't.
Right.
Thank you so much for calling.
Well, thank you so much for taking my question. And for, can you repeat again, you mentioned that organization that I could connect with to stay apprised of what's going on in my area. Did you say BAAO? I'm sorry, I didn't get it written down.
Hi, Ms. Vermillion, it's Mike Culp. If you can send us an email at BAAO, so that's BAAO at albemarle.org, and include your address. We're actually on a separate laptop looking up Franklin Drive using the Commonwealth Connect map. There's a new map that's out there that the state of Virginia puts in, and you can put your address in that map. Anybody, you know, what we were talking about earlier, there's already a facility that allows you to drop your address in the Commonwealth Connect map that shows you what's coming and what's already available in specific areas. Now, it's not 100% accurate, and the DHCD broadband office who runs the map understands that, but it is the most useful tool out there that'll tell you where things are and where things are coming. So please let us know through email and we'll respond back to what's coming to your particular address.
I sure
And work with
appreciate
you
that.
something in the meantime. Yep, you bet. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Not at this time, sir.
All righty, let's move on. I thank the public for their contributions. Helps keep us focused. Next item on the agenda is approval of the August 24th, 2022 meeting minutes. Bill distributed these minutes, or Mr. Fritz, our secretary. Bill, did you get any significant comments back from folks?
Nothing significant, just some minor changes, and I've made all of those. Thank you all for sending those.
Then I would move to approve the minutes. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Fritz. All right, let's go into old business. The Friday 2021 update. What do you have,
Thank you,
Mike?
Chair. We have 3 or 4 slides. Jason and I'll probably jump back and forth on this so that we don't wear our voice boxes out, but I will be as quickly as possible because we have a lot of updates to provide to the Broadband Authority. The most recent project that is in the VADE 2021 set of projects. We've had 9 different project areas and we're up to the 6th project area, and that's Milton Hills. And Milton Hills has actually had some successful activations. So not only has Milton Hills been launched, some of the early installs have already happened. So that particular neighborhood, we're seeing some success in people getting connected and attached to fiber. We're still waiting on Taylor's Gap, which is near the Rosemont subdivision. That's a lot of area out there off of Dick Woods Road. So there's been some delays there because of restraints on construction crews and delays, and unfortunately some private utility markings in Rosemont have also taken resources away from Taylor's Gap. So as we can go through and make sure Rosemont is getting service, that those same crews have been moved over to work on Taylor's Gap to help, and just a lot of transfer of resources. The big discussion item is on September 21st, CenturyLink Lumen, which will soon become Brightspeed, sent a request to the Broadband Authority asking to extend the period of performance for body 2021 from the original date, which was December 5th, 2022, to a new date, March 31st, 2023. And the reasons are particular for any type of construction project. There's process delays getting the appropriate equipment in. Sometimes equipment that is special in nature is not easy to acquire. So if there's special boring equipment, it takes a while for that type of equipment to show up on sites. And there's also been some material and labor shortages. So the question that will become in front of the Broadband Authority is whether or not the Broadband Authority wants to accept the extension request. If the Broadband Authority does accept the extension request, it then goes forward to DHCD, and DHCD has the final say. So even if the Broadband Authority says it's okay to send in a letter, DHCD could come back and say no. Preferably, they'll say yes, and things will continue to move along. But there is the opportunity for either the Broadband Authority or DHCD to come back and say, we'd like to see something different from CenturyLink Lumen and eventually Brightspeed. So it's a tough thing to address today, but we'd like to have the Broadband Authority comment and make a decision one way or the other. I think a draft letter was sent around, so I think everyone has the letter of extension requests. And I don't know whether to leave it there and then continue with 21, or we want to talk about the letter of extension request now.
We go one slide forward.
One more.
One thing to note, work will continue. This is not a stoppage for delay. The works plan is expected to continue, and by the original deadline of December 5th, Lumen has expectations that they're going to reach 1,168 passings total. They're at about 500 passings, so we're talking about a pretty significant workload between now and December 5th. The expectation at that point would be an additional 500 passings between December 5th and March 31st of 2022. The second inclusion in your packet is the draft letter that we distributed earlier today, which did not print on both sides. If you'd like, we can print some additional copies of that and discuss it, or leave it to the chair if you want us to continue through the rest of the Value 21 update and then return to this.
Let's take up the question of if we're okay with extending the timeline, and then how do we communicate that as a secondary to that question. So is there any discussion on that topic?
It is consistent with capital projects. County has been responsible for managing over the past year as far as some of the delays that we're seeing in both procurement, long lead, and labor. So it is along that theme of consistency. I'm not surprised that we're receiving it. It would be probably better to have maybe addressed this earlier. I don't think this is shocking or surprising news. We in the spring probably saw this, this coming. But I would just say from an industry perspective, I think this is where the construction industry is in a lot of different aspects of work beyond just cabling. Therefore, I'm supportive of it. I just wish
It were otherwise.
we had done it, yeah,
Yeah, and sooner.
and it'd be otherwise.
My day job is procurement, federal procurement, and whenever a vendor needs a contract extended because they cannot perform in the assigned period of performance, you have two choices. You can say yes or you can say no. And if you say no, which is, I think, a better option more often than others think that it is, it has to be because you're prepared to get that service in some other way in a timelier fashion. And CenturyLink functionally has a monopoly in much of the rural area. If we say no to this extension, our backup plan is hoping that CVEC in the next few years covers the affected area. And as somebody who lives in the affected area, that would be very disappointing. more disappointing, of course, than my feeling right now about, I mean, I'm looking at a document on my computer here that I dared make about 60 days ago called with gigabit. And I started a checklist of like stuff I can do. I can use iCloud when that comes. That'll be amazing. I can back up my phone to the cloud. And it is very disappointing to have allowed myself to feel that hope. And then it's gone. And even more disappointing to find that I agree with Trevor that we don't have a whole lot of choice here in a practical sense. I am not prepared to tell many of those folks in these 1,600 passings, sorry, we couldn't get it on time. We could have got it a few months later, but we decided to cut off our noses to spite our faces. So although emotionally, I feel like I'd like to say absolutely not, I don't think it is sensible to do anything other than to allow this extension. One other point I want to make, I don't believe that they're going to serve 1,200 homes by December 5th. I drove down Stony Point on the way here. They haven't broken ground anywhere. I don't really understand how in the next 60 odd days, they're going to be ready to extend service to those homes. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't really get it.
Like you, I don't see any better alternatives to us. It's not the choice I would prefer, but in a yay or nay situation, I think yay is our only choice. Anybody else?
Concur.
All those in favor of moving forward on the extension process, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we've settled that issue and how to communicate that. You circulated the draft letter. What would you propose we do?
You just sign, you can put your digital signature on it and then it goes to DHCD as an official document from the authority.
Trevor brought up a point that might be useful to reflect in the letter, and that is that we have experienced the same thing with other capital projects in the area. Make sure that that's reflected properly in the letter. Which is not by means of saying this is great, but it's not atypical.
Correct. We can add that.
I can circulate that to tonight after the meeting, and we can have it sent out tomorrow morning.
That'd be great.
I'd like to make a point about this.
Yes.
There was a discussion that I know Mike and I had, and I forget who else was involved in that discussion, that we had almost exactly a year ago, in which we said, it's a real concern we have here, that there's going to be shortages of materials and labor. And we don't believe that bidders are actively building that into their estimations. And so in the October meeting, we had Gary Wood from CVAC, of course, not related at all to this Valley 2021 work, who explained the steps they had taken to deal with that. Now, we're not psychic, and yet somehow we knew a year ago that this would be a problem. I am further frustrated that CenturyLink Lumen, having the exact same information as us, presented this schedule that was presumably based on the assumption that they have all the parts and labor that they needed, which was obviously wrong. And then that we didn't get the request for an extension until apparently in the past month since the last board meeting. Did they not see this coming? Like their schedule had October, a few days from now, service starting to be made available to folks in Stony Point. So I guess my suggestion is whatever level of skepticism that we're operating on with site inspections and so on, and assuming that they're gonna step up, maybe we need to raise the level of skepticism. I don't know how you do that. I don't know what that looks like, as I'm not in the business of inspecting the broadband installation. But that we're able to, that they got so close to the delivery date before saying, oh, never mind, we're not going to make it. I don't get that. And somebody wasn't telling somebody the truth. And I don't know where in Lumen that lay.
Or, what it will be like with Brightspeed.
Yeah.
A complicating factor.
Yeah, the further frustrating is my suspicion that Lumen CenturyLink thought, we're gonna be passing Mr. Brightspeed anyway, we can just blame them, except them is a bunch of the employees that are at Lumen and CenturyLink now that are moving to Brightspeed. So I don't even know who the them is that is separate as an entity. I just feel played. It's really frustrating. I have no action items to propose other than like be more skeptical somehow, but not feeling good about this.
Let's take a weathered eye to what we are doing here.
Yeah. yeah, maybe we can be more cynical.
Mr. Chair, our next two topics are related to what we've discussed first.
Right.
The transition was the next topic we were going to discuss. And then second after that is the increased scrutiny and to a certain extent skepticism. And for that, we do have Mr. Cottle and representatives from Lumen. So if anybody has any questions for them, we can elevate them. Let me go ahead.
Yeah, just as an update, the question of the transfer of assets becomes a situation of, did CenturyLink Lumen, the folks that are working with us now that are switching over to Brightspeed, have the backing of the corporate entity that was running the show? And, we don't have as much
We are a very
information as
small
we
piece of that
deserve.
puzzle.
Yes, yeah, we don't have as much information as we deserve, and CenturyLink has heard this from me several times, multiple times, until my face turns blue. But it's been very frustrating. It has been very frustrating working in a situation where answers from the parent company are not coming to the people who are trying hard to do the work. So we appreciate all the work of the folks who have been employed by CenturyLink Lumen and will now be Brightspeed. And once the Brightspeed transition happens, they'll have access to more resources so that they can do better work. Now, part of that has been reflected in letters that have gone back and forth between DHCD and residents of Albemarle County. So the state has been informed about issues that have been going on with the CenturyLink Lumen performance on Body 21. And as a result, we'll get to that. But I think, as far as we know, everything that is going to happen in regards to the transition will be happening in the first 2 or 3 weeks of October.
So as a quick review, we first heard about the transfer of ILEC assets from Lumen to a new entity, then known as Connect Holdings, now known as Brightspeed, in November of last year. The original expectation was a completion of the transfer in the summertime. For some clarity, the two relevant entities in our area, corporate entities, are Central Telephone of Virginia and CenturyTel Broadband Services. So those are actually the corporate entities that operate under the banner of CenturyLink right now, as well as Quantum Fiber. Central Telephone, doing business as CenturyLink, is the entity that was involved in the Body 2021 project. I believe we've already conveyed a letter to DHCD, making clear, or Brightspeed has conveyed a letter to DHCD, making clear that they will be taking on, as the new owners of Central Telephone, they will be taking on and continuing this project. So from sort of an administrative bureaucratic side, that element of the transfer has been completed. The expectation is a completion of the transfer, which will entail changes in business process, as well as some changes to customer experience in early October, is how we've been asked to express that.
So I'll go back.
Jason, can you clarify, just the DHCD, sorry, Mike.
That's it.
DHCD has approved that administrative transfer.
So it's not because because Central Telephone of Virginia is conveyed, then there's no approval.
Okay.
It is just a notice.
And that's the conveyance is,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yep.
So when we, eventually, when the work is done and everybody's satisfied with it, and we are invoiced for this work, the invoice will be then coming from Brightspeed.
Right now, I'll try to answer this. We're in the
I said that
process.
like that was actually a question.
No, it will probably be under the CenturyTel or Central Telephone of Virginia.
Yeah.
The decision hasn't been made whether it's going to move over to the Brightspeed processing. And the other important thing to bring up with the authority is, we have an active purchase order. That purchase order will transfer over to as part of the acquisition of Central Telephone of Virginia and CenturyTel Broadband Services. So it's, for us, it's a clear transition, at least on the invoice processing side. But it's important to note that customers may soon receive bills from a different entity, Brightspeed or Quantum Fiber. So it's going to be somewhat of a challenging time from the customer service and customer processing time, but as far as invoicing, we're going to be able to handle it on our financial side. The last point I'll make is that the process for us acquiring reimbursement from the Commonwealth of Virginia, they don't have a contract, they don't have an invoice or a purchase order with Central Telephone of Virginia or Brightspeed. Their contract is with the Broadband Authority. We have to go through a process where we make a request for reimbursement. DHCD, the Commonwealth's agency that's processing body, goes through that and then can either approve or deny our request for reimbursement. So there are certain things that we're going to have to submit to the state. Otherwise, Brightspeed, whoever you want to call them, Central Telephone, they're not going to be able to get the lion's share of the money that's been set aside for this project. So we're at a critical point in the project where funding is a major issue.
I'm not as concerned about that, but if I were in your shoes, I'd be concerned about all the customers in Albemarle who are going to get bills from someone else next month. Because even if there's nothing changed on those bills, you're going to hear from people who feel like something has changed.
And there was a notice a month ago to.
There've been 2 notices to recipients.
Oh,
To customers about this transition. So we have heard from some customers already that asking who is this entity, and so we are striving to communicate that, and we'll do our best to communicate that specifically to body residents further on the 7th, which is our next webinar.
And you can tell them, yes, your Embark mail address will still persist for a little while longer.
Yeah, it's a deep cut.
Okay, next slide. So on September 8th, representatives from the Commonwealth, DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, Carl Cardell and Tammy Bresky. Tammy Bresky is the broadband program manager. She's over all of the body effort and reports directly to Tamara Holmes. Carl is a program manager and he's on the phone with us. So they paid us what's a standard visit for all of their body awards, and identified a number of issues. We had a desktop conversation, a tabletop conversation in this room, actually, where numerous issues that we had seen from a process perspective were brought up and discussed. And then we all got into a county van and visited 2 of our project areas that were in active development, one in Rosemont, and then the other at Advanced Mills Village, and as well as Laurel Ridge Road. So one in the northern part of the county and one in the right in the center of the county, both of which we saw issues that raised the concern that required DHCD to send us a letter of finding. And since that time, we've had multiple email conversation as well as some meetings with DHCD involved and CenturyLink Lumen representatives involved, and have a plan to address those findings as well as put it in what is called a corrective action plan. So we're working together to make sure we're addressing all of the issues that DHCD put in their letter of finding.
Trevor, did you have a question?
No, it's related to this. I'll wait another slide.
Yeah, 2 more slides. There are 2 deficiencies that were specifically identified. One is a lack of full and transparent communications, specifically regarding the process for obtaining service, as well as the actual installations, cancellations of appointments, rescheduling of appointments without prior notice. And then residential installations without regard to homeowners' property. And they specifically cited a couple of instances that were seen during the site visit of damage to the resident's property, including 2 driveways, without sufficient remediation at the time. Obviously, these are things that we have been tracking and are working to come up with a system, especially for the restoration of property issues, a system for us to be able to get confirmation when the work has been completed. And our colleague Tommy Garland has been really essential in that aspect because he can, as our field person, he can go out and actually take a look at what work has been done and what hasn't.
To acknowledge these findings are consistent with what we've been hearing from people, you know, in our community in these affected areas. So this is not unexpected.
Gonna hit the next.
Yeah,
one real quick.
So there has been corrective action already. I just want to make sure the authority knows we have a tracker that we're clearing the backlog. So there's positive action going on with some of our locations that haven't been served. That have been served in the last 3 weeks. So some folks were waiting up to 4 months to get their installs.
Which is fixing it after the cow got
Yes.
out of the
Yes.
room, but we've got hundreds and hundreds more people to be connected under this program. The preventative action, I think, is probably of even greater interest.
And those items are covered in addition to the corrective action plan. There is a requirement for a list of all customers who are considered to have been affected by these issues, justification for each instance, and then an action plan for each instance with a time frame. Those are elements that we think are going to be really, really important and are part of the work that's ongoing right now. The last one is an outline of existing customer experience processes and planned or implemented improvements. This is where the difference between avoiding fixing the problems and then avoiding them in the future is hopefully going to come into bear. On all of these things, we're going to be working very closely with DHCD to make sure that their expectations are met both for what is being provided to them, but also for demonstrating effectiveness in the improvements. And then we have some timeline issues that we just wanted to cover real quick.
Okay.
So the corrective action plan and additional items are to have been provided by CenturyLink. Obviously, given the timeline, that's going to be Brightspeed, and approved by ABBA. DHD had set the October 24th as the date for materials due. That would be 30 days after receipt of the original letter of finding. Our next scheduled ABBA meeting is the 26th. So we've already spoken with Mr. Cottle, and we'll be asking ABBA to transmit a letter asking for an extension to October 27th. So that way we will have time to approve.
We will have to assemble a special meeting
Exactly.
just to do that.
And they have done, they have stated that that should not be a concern. And then we will be asking and working with CenturyLink to get those materials to the authority by October the 19th. So we're asking them to have worked with us to prepare all of these materials by the 19th. So that way we can put them before you all with enough time to discuss it at the October 26th meeting.
Well, presumably we should have a motion and a vote to the effect we would like to have an extension to the 27th. Is there any discussion? Trevor?
Just thanks for laying this out. That was the first thing I flagged when I read it. I did the math and said, looks like a special meeting. And I'm glad that the office is already been working with HCD. You know, if you're reading the letters of finding, it is additionally, Albemarle Broadband Authority shall provide justification. So this is our letter of corrective action. I know Mike and Jason are running point with CenturyLink, but that we, you know, as a board, we need to make sure we're comfortable with what
We need to own this.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that we're going to have this, you know, a week ahead of time. And I would propose that if we have questions on what we see, we will have to respond individually to Mike and Jason, because we can't have a board meeting, you know,
Without having a meeting.
without having a meeting. But it would be really good to get all our questions clarified so that we can have a final letter on the 26th that we're good with. So
Assuming we get
does,
such an
yeah,
extension.
is, right, assuming that we get the extension, is a week enough time for us as a authority to be able to do that?
I would hope so.
Okay.
And I think we're in a position, I'll just offer, I think we're in a position to block off a significant amount of time during that preceding week to make sure that we have time to coordinate with CenturyLink, but also to handle any incoming feedback and any revisions or edits that are requested from the authority.
Any other comment, Jim?
We get a formal notice from DHCD of the extension at some point.
After the authority transmits a letter, they will send a response stating yay or nay on an extension to the 27th.
Was your question, I think what it was, we need a formal response requesting this schedule.
Right.
So I propose, a letter or correspondence to DHCD that lays out this response plan.
Yeah.
Including the extension.
The idea is to keep them separate. Remember, we talked earlier about it, extending the timeline, that should be in a separate letter, which we already have. So that one goes through,
That's a separate thing.
right? Got it.
This is us formally asking.
A little more time on the corrective action plan.
Exactly.
I'll second that motion.
The alternative being that we're gonna have to have a
Special meeting, so we can review this, yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's possible to get this extension, it seems like it would certainly be very convenient for us. Allow us to do the best possible work, because we'll have a sufficient time to review the materials. No other comments, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of asking for this extension, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So we should get a letter drafted, as Trevor said, laying out our rationale and the timeline here, and put this request forward. Hopefully the DHCD will be there to approve. Granting it.
I mean, I don't see on the schedule here when is required to get the materials.
Oh, sorry, it's on the next slide. Our request is that they have it to us by the 19th. We've already expressed to them that is our expectation, is that the work is completed by the 19th. So that way we can send it on to you all. So they're aware. As just additional update, our monthly webinars are continuing to go well, and are well attended. This next one on the 7th, given the extension, the letter of finding, and the transition to Brightspeed all sort of occurring at the same time, we expect that this month's meeting is going to be very active, with a lot of questions surrounding this particular topic. So we're going to kind of set aside our normal agenda and process to just devote time to
On those items.
expressing all of this and making sure that people have an opportunity to ask questions. Representatives from CenturyLink that at that point Brightspeed have agreed to attend, and so we will have them present. If you'll go one more, we're just going to as an update, we do have updated numbers for the Body 21 project. One thing that surprised me in updating those numbers are pending. So that is residents that are waiting for their installations is staying the same. And the reason for that is the launch of Milton Hills. So as you can see, there are 21 new orders. 34 new orders that were placed in Milton Hills since last month. And they've actually managed to, as Mike said, activate 11 of those individuals. And so that 20, make sure I've got that. I'm not wearing my glasses. Those 23 pending just in Milton Hills. That also represents 23 installations that they cleared in that same time frame. So the work is progressing, even as they launch new project areas. They're still getting connected in the backlog. And the next slide is just that timeline that we've typically got. And with that, we do have representatives from DHCD and CenturyLink. If the chair would like to invite any of them on to ask questions, otherwise we can move on to the next topic.
I'd be delighted, particularly to hear from both groups. But let's talk about this corrective action. And it's one thing to have a letter and read the details there, but that doesn't convey the tone of voice and the focus that I think both parties bring to this table. From the Brightspeed CenturyLink side and from the DHCD side.
I'm promoting them. On the line right now is Mr. Cottle. And hopefully shortly we will have Mr. Brewer as well as Ms. Carroll to And they are available for questions.
Well, welcome aboard. Let me start with Mr. Caudle from DHCD. Thank you for the letter of findings. I always take a view that any kind of quality check of what's going on is free consulting and helps us do a better job. And that's what we want to do. We want to do the very best job we can. We've read the letter, and you've probably heard our recent discussion on that topic. But I wonder if there are any points of emphasis you would like to make with regard to the letter's content.
No, but I would like to invite Tammy Bresky. She is also in the call with us.
Let me get her. Sorry, one second.
We'll bring her on board too.
Okay. But no, it was we had planned these site visits in 2020 when we know what happened in 2020. So we never got a chance to do the site visits. So it worked out. The timing of it for your all's site visit worked well in finding the issues that you all are facing. And that's what the site visits are for. They're to see how the project is going and if there's any issues to address those issues. The letter of finding is an action plan for you all to resolve the issues. You know, at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. We want people hooked up. And that's what the letter of findings is for, is to make sure that we still achieve that goal.
I agree. We're all heading in the same direction. We all have the same goals. Has Tammy joined us?
Yes, Ms. Bresky has joined.
Ms. Bresky, would you like to add anything to that?
Just to sit there and say, this letter of finding and this corrective action plan is something serious. But it's also not that serious in that I think this is an easy fix for both the county and the ISP to get together on that same page. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but we have really staffed up our office. So when the office was started, technically in 2019, there were 2 people. We currently now have 12 positions. I have 3 project managers underneath me, and we actually have an opening for a 4th project manager. So again, every 2021 project as of tomorrow will have had a site visit. And, you guys aren't the only ones with a corrective action plan here. So, but in my mind, a lot of these issues, I don't want to call them small, but, these are easily fixable items for you guys. And, we appreciate working with, the Broadband Authority, Mike and Jason, and your partners at Lumen, CenturyLink, Brightspeed, and taking us out on these site visits. So we really appreciated that. And it helped us gain an understanding of really what you guys are dealing with in your areas and everything. Because again, we cover the entire state with these projects, and every area seems to have just a little bit different expectations and, difficulties with terrain and everything like that. But, this is something we are taking seriously. And I think, Mike and Jason are aware of that. And I believe your partners at CenturyLink, Lumen, Brightspeed are aware of that also.
Well, thank you very much. I share your optimism that this is a manageable problem, and I look forward to us managing it. Perhaps the team from the vendor side would like to weigh in.
Mr. Brewer is on.
Mr. Brewer.
Good evening. Yes, Steve Brewer, as I sit today with Lumen, and very, very short order, we will be making the jump over to Brightspeed, and very excited about that. Certainly, I have provided the letter of finding to the Brightspeed leadership team, along with the expectation that we have a corrective action plan on Mike and Jason's desk no later than October 19th, and we will certainly work in that regard. I'd also like to mention we are going to bring a local governmental affairs employee on board when we make the jump to Brightspeed. So we will have have a resident of the state of Virginia as part of my team. I'm very excited about that, and that will happen in very short order, and should continue to make the should assist in the working relationship between us and the county. But again, we're well aware of the letter of finding and actively working on a plan to address those issues, and every intent is to have that before Mike and Jason own or before October 19th.
That's fantastic. We look forward to a fresh start, if you will, as we turn this page with Brightspeed coming on board. Are there any other questions or comments from authority members? Well, I thank you all very much for your participation this evening, and we're going to work through this problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want to go back to the share and do the. No. Oh, it actually kicked me out and pressed down.
You need more windows, Mike. More windows open.
No idea.
Folks on the phone, bear with us a second. We're playing with our new technologies and getting back to our place in the meeting. I guess I should say folks online, probably more so than on the phone.
We got one on the
Well, to that individual.
phone. Yeah.
I believe she's actually with Lumen.
Okay, so unless there's any other questions, we'll move on to 22, body 22,
Sounds good.
which there's been a lot of activity. The first quarterly stakeholder meeting. So every quarter there will be a meeting hosted by the applicant. So this is the first year for body where Albemarle County is not the applicant. The applicant in 2022 was TJPDC. So the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission was the lead applicant, with Firefly as the co-applicant. And Firefly, as everyone is aware, has arrangements with Appalachian Power, Dominion Energy, Rappahannock Electric Co-op, and they're doing a very big project. So it's an amazing accomplishment for the Commonwealth of Virginia, DHCD. We're very excited about the work that's going to happen over the next 3 years. Sometimes I say 3 or 4 years, but I'm very optimistic that 3 years is a good target. So as Jason pointed out, one of the big outcomes of that quarterly stakeholder meeting was the announcement of the scheduling for this will be in like 6 months increments. And Firefly will be sending out notification to individual homeowners in the project area. So there's going to be a different process for notification. Firefly is taking the lead on that, and they will be sending letters to people who are involved so that they'll have an idea of when they'll be ready to receive their service. Firefly is also taking what is called pre-registrations. So if the service is soon to be available, they request that you pre-register, and that way the service drop may include some additional costs, but in most cases it won't. If you wait until after they've gone through that project area, there will be an additional cost just to get connected. Right now, that's around $100, but so the idea is to get people connected while Firefly is working in the particular area. So a lot of good things there. Jason, you have anything else to add on that, or you got to attend? I was.
You want to hit one?
Yeah.
Right. No, actually, that's it for 22. The stakeholder meeting went really well. One thing to note for when you consider differences between our 2020, 2021, and 2022 projects, a key member of the team is Kimberly Gardner, who's actually in attendance with us from our grants team. Kimberly and the grants team are working hand in hand more and more with 21, but from the beginning with 22, we're going to be working very closely with them. Obviously, this is related to ARPA funding. So there are federal reporting requirements, state reporting requirements, and then certainly requirements from TJPDC, as well as requirements from the county that all need to be met. And so the grants team is going to be helping us keep all of those coordinated and on track. Since it's such a long project, the reporting is going to be very, very important. And so
We're very grateful.
we are very grateful. Absolutely.
Good.
Questions on 22?
I understand that the 6-month increments, do we have a sense of the total duration of work that will occur in the county?
Not until Dominion has submitted their middle mile. So work that might occur in the first several months doesn't necessarily mean that they're planning on launching in the first several months, but work that might occur in the first several months will be in the App Power area, as well as potentially in the Rappahannock electric areas. The CVEC areas are still being completed, but those are not within this project, although they are in the part of the greater RISE project, I believe. In this first chunk, we might see work done in Rappahannock Electric and AEP. Once Dominion has put in their middle mile schedule, submitted it to the SCC, which they might also do in chunks. That's when we're going to know more about the timeline for the rest of the Albemarle area.
So for our area, significant amount of work, Dominion is critical path.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
23, so we're moving on. The application, once again, submitted with TJPDC. In this particular case, the funding that is being provided to match 23. And these applications are currently in and under what is called the challenge process. So right now we're in the process of where other ISPs can challenge that A23 application.
Have you reviewed the other applications that are out there and the totals and all that stuff?
I wish I had more time. I think in prior years, we've definitely done a much better job of going through and analyzing line by line. So I have to answer that question right now is I have not.
So we don't know where we stand in the overall mix. Okay. Well, we always only guessed before, so.
Right.
Could you, for folks who are looking at this, could you explain the color coding on the map?
Yes, I'll quickly go through this. What has happened is up until 22, the speeds for body applications were 25.3. So to qualify to be a body application, you had to have speeds 25.3 or below. So now that's moved to 100. So 100 megabits per second. It's just a jump in speed that allowed additional areas to come open. Essentially those orange areas that you see on this map are areas where customers there currently have speeds that are above 25.3, but below 120. Same is true with the beam that we talked about earlier, and we're going to talk about that during our BAAO report.
So the orange is,
they fell past the line. They didn't qualify. So all of those parcels that are in those orange spots until 23 did not qualify as parcels that you could put in your application. In other words, your application would be bounced if you included them because the current providers could claim that they were already served based on body qualification. Jason?
and just to clarify, so the orange is what is submitted in body 23, and the red is actually the body 22 overlay. And if you jump one more, the total project in Albemarle County here, as described, is another 1,500 passings with a total project cost of 8.8 million. The body request is 3.6 million. With a BAAO match rather than an ALBA match of no greater than $440,000. I wanted to make sure that we touch this slide and to touch on your question about our chances. Right now, there is $50 million carried over actually from last year's budget allocation to the body program. So this is state funds, not federal funds. There are, as of yet, no additional funds allocated to this initiative for this year. There are also projects that would encompass the entirety of that $50 million on the table. And so given the landscape, it is, and we've discussed this in the past, it is distinctly possible that VADI will go towards entirely unserved areas that are still below 23, and that might soak up the entirety of that $50 million. And from a Commonwealth's perspective, that's a good thing. That doesn't mean that there's a chance that we might get a portion. Our ask is relatively modest compared to some of the other requests, and so there might be room for us, but it is a very challenging cycle because we don't have the funds that we did in last year's.
Once again, TJPDC is the lead applicant on this.
So your batting streak is still south. You're batting 1,000.
Is 1,000.
No risk of that.
Anything else on 2023?
No, I think that's it. Thanks, Chair.
That takes us to our financial report.
No change from last month, sir.
Okay, moving right along. Back to you guys, the BAAO report.
Try to catch us up.
We are going to try to
For folks online, just start out by telling us what the BAAO is.
Gladly. So the Broadband Accessibility and Affordability Office was established about a year and change ago with the mission of improving access and affordability of broadband throughout the county. Our internal mission is to ensure that residents of all means have access to adequate and affordable broadband service. We have been working on a lot of different fronts. We wanted to respect the authority's time. And so we're actually just going to move quickly through some bullet points, starting with the IEPP launch. So this is the Comcast specific program that we've talked about that provides the opportunity for no cost internet service at 50 megabits over 5 for low-income residents and eligible residents in the county. This was previously offered only through the school system. As this is our first month, we are happy to have contributed to 40 households having no cost internet service in Albemarle County. And in due course, we do expect to increase that number to cover residents for lots of different eligibility criteria, not just enrollment in the free and reduced school lunch program. We also, and I will distribute this after the call, we continued our participation in the stakeholder advisory group that was established by recent legislation to talk about covering broadband in new commercial and residential developments. The recommendations for that were included in the final report for the stakeholder group. They included a recommendation for continued funding sources, which is something that I think the Commonwealth probably expected, that we would recommend that they continue funding broadband expansions. There was also a recommendation to establish a infrastructure revolving loan program, so a fund where eligible new developments could tap for low interest loans or grants to fund infrastructure development to include water, sewer, gas, and broadband. This would be one of the first times that broadband is treated as a utility. And so that was one of the recommendations that received consensus. And then there was some agreement around the idea of a broadband ready designation that would be managed potentially by a state agency, localities themselves, or a lobbying group. And that one received some attention. Interestingly, the department, so the broadband office, actually had its own recommendations, one of which was to pass clarifying language that establishes that municipalities can expend local resources to fund broadband expansion projects and promotion. This is a recommendation that we wholeheartedly endorse. It would certainly give us more reach and flexibility. And with that, establishing a actually, I lost my train of thought on that one, and I don't have my notes. So I will just say the meeting, I will distribute the final report. The meeting for that will be this Friday at the BAC, Broadband Advisory Council. And hopefully the recommendations will be well received. And then not quite lastly.
Jason, just you used the word municipality. Is that how the language would be written, or does that distinguish between cities and counties?
So we weren't working in legislative language.
Okay.
And that was something that they distinguished early on because they wanted to make sure that we didn't fixate on the language specifically. I believe the actual language in the report was localities.
Localities, yes.
Yeah. And we have continued our work with of coalition building. We had our second meeting towards a regional digital equity plan with representatives from the university. And we have met with a number of other stakeholders in the area, including JABA, PHA, and the library. The goal is that we start addressing digital equity needs on a regional basis. And in order to accomplish that, we need to start by doing an assessment of what are those needs and where are their assets. And so we are planning on meeting on a more regular basis, monthly for now. And as part of that coalition building, we're also looking at some funding opportunities that are going to come up soon with public housing entities through the FCC's Your Home, Your Internet program. We hope to share a lot more about that next month or possibly the month after, once we had an opportunity to assess the public notice for that program and work with our stakeholders to come up with a plan for moving forward with that. And then lastly, we did want to cover, we did receive word late last week that the Chantel Beam service would be terminated. This was a program that was funded through CARES Act funding and established 5 sites and is actually currently serving over 300 households in Albemarle County with service that is above that original 25 and 3 threshold. Since, in addition to Ms. Vermillion earlier, since the announcement of that termination, which went out in a letter to residents that are currently on the service, we've had a number of calls about this. We are going to be working with providers in our area to get people switched over prior to the November 30th date. And that includes working with Lumen in a significant number of subscribers to Beam actually live on Stony Point Road, which is the next major project area. And so we're going to be working with them to coordinate the possibility of getting people switched over before the termination date, which is at present November 30th. Of 2022. We will be meeting with Beam tomorrow to discuss the status of this termination and whether there's any facility for extending it any further to ensure that residents don't lose service entirely.
The CARES Act funding contract that you guys put out, it wasn't something the Broadband Authority did. I'm not familiar with the terms of that agreement, but is it okay for them to pack up and go away at this time?
Yes.
And is this the earliest date or just a date?
The contract and Richie,
I had it at 18 months and I think they passed the 18 months. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
so it's not.
When we made this decision to do it, it was in, what seemed like, the worst part of the pandemic. We later learned that actually maybe it wasn't, but the decision was made. There was a
We had a
timeline
tight time window. Yeah.
on that funding. And the conversations that we had internally was recognizing this was a triaging step to gain access for those that, needed that remote connection. Thinking that, in 3 or 4 years, fiber in the ground, it would maybe be at least a competitive opportunity. And so the contract had a period of performance, but we went into it knowing that, it likely would have a
With
limited
sundown
horizon.
sometime.
Yeah. We didn't expect it to be a couple of
This soon.
years. Yeah. But it was a business decision, as I understand it, from what Mike has shared with me, that corporate offices made because of the decision on how the feds in the state are now recognizing what broadband service is. And so it has really eliminated that service model. We're hopeful that maybe we can gain some extension of that. Can you go to the end of the calendar year by another month. But
Yeah, obviously, if you're facing having no connection versus if I could just go on 3 more months, then I can get on this fiber that's coming down my road.
Right.
And that makes a big difference to folks.
so
Otherwise, the broadband office is here to assist. So the same email that we give out, baao.albemarle.org. People can contact us and we'll connect them with available options and help make sure if they have an install request, that we'll track it for them and monitor and make sure that it gets resolved.
Supervisor Price is affected by this. And
Yeah.
we talked this morning, and she was thankful to have had the service because it really did bridge, her needs as a board member and all the many meetings that she had in the past 18 months.
And I'm sure there are 300 more storage, just like hers.
I think there's a strategic point here, something that we talked about back when we said, look, we want to establish some stopgap service. The way to do this quickly probably is with point to point. One of the things we were talking about then is to what extent will fixed wireless be an acceptable way to cover some small percentage of folks in Albemarle County? It seems to me that the business case apparently isn't really there. And so at whatever time whatever universal fiber looks like in Albemarle County, 99% of households, it seems like what's not going to cover those final households is this, that's not going to work, and that we may need to fall back on, as we talked about before, something like Starlink.
Right, a lower orbit.
We have to take this out of our window.
Unfortunate.
We are continuing discussions with a private cellular network provider that would be able to work with us on a pilot fixed wireless solution. We've brought that idea up both as an asset for county business, where we have county assets that are in remote areas that may not be feasible to get fiber service out there. But we've also considered it for both emergency response and for exactly what you mentioned, Mr. Jacobs, just covering areas where fiber is not feasible, even from a residential perspective. So we are looking at probably a springtime timeframe for that pilot. And we're working actually with the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority and Solid Waste Authority as our partner in that pilot. The last item that we have in your packet, the second item is the most up-to-date draft of the broadband status report. This is our quarterly report. We will be submitting it to the Board of Supervisors this month in October. My apologies. And so
October 19th meeting. Yeah.
by end of business tomorrow, if we can have any other revisions or updates, we would appreciate it. And that's all I got.
Jason, did we, and I apologize, I didn't read this as closely as I should have. Were we able to include anything in here? I know Chantel was late breaking. Is that in here at all?
I wanted to make sure that there was no changes. And so that's why I'm putting off any additional changes until at the business. So that way, if anything changes and we can include a specific item about that, then we will update it.
Because I know a couple of board members are receiving questions, and so it'd be good to put that in a formal correspondence.
Yeah, I will have the final by close of business tomorrow.
Yeah, we have a 10 a.m. until tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get a lot more information that would make the update. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, sir.
That takes us on to the Broadband Authority strategic plan discussion. Hopefully everyone had a chance to read through the new and improved strategic plan. Shortly after I distributed that to everyone here, I received a few more comments from our esteemed lawyer, who really not material changes, but some wordsmithing things that clarified a few items and streamlined some things or what have you. But I'm wondering if there's any feedback on what you've seen so far, any concerns, comments, thoughts, things we need to do, things we shouldn't do. Should we meet on this 6 times over the coming 6 months to discuss things? Where do we go from here, Kai? That's what I'm asking.
I would find it helpful, just because this I've been used to working for years, and maybe this is how the county works, to be able to have a discussion through comments on a document. Like I'm used to doing this in Google Docs, wherever I could say, what about this? And Bucky, you could say, that's a terrible idea, Waldo. And Trevor could say, no, he's got something here. As opposed to emailing around Word files. Is that a thing that is supported by Office 365 or whatever? Like, is that possible?
It is. What's the FOIA side of that, Richie? If
Should be
the
working on.
authority has
We're
access,
Protected by working doc, but are we concerned?
I'm also not concerned.
It's certainly not anything we're not going to publish one day.
Yeah.
So
I
we're not having a meeting, we're not taking actions, we're just exchanging comments. But I'll leave
The
it to you.
public records that
Yeah,
if someone was really interested in looking at the balloons on the side. I feel sorry for them, but that's okay.
I mean, personally, I'd be happy for that document to be open to the public for anybody to look at my comments. Like, I'm not personally concerned.
It's actually probably more open than any other option.
yeah, there's no.
I mean,
no
I think
trade
the Google
secrets in
Docs
here.
would be, it would be limited to whoever got invited, so that would.
we have a SharePoint
Yeah.
or through Teams or SharePoint. There's ways to share that we can all have access to it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how staff work all the time on a singular document.
Well, perhaps we could put the document up in its current modified format with the current comments in. I can send along the comments that Richie sent to me. They can be, or actually I can send along the version that has the comments that Richie sent to me, and that way they'll be in there for everyone to see. Post that one and then send us all an invite to the shared document we can edit on, and everyone provide their feedback, comments, etc., and we'll take this up in the October meeting.
There are 2 points, Bucky,
Sure.
I think, and not to drill into the details, but just kind of calling it out for the board's consideration. One is it's section 4, which is development, which is there's some wording in there where it is envisioning the sunsetting of ABBA as an entity to
ABBA not being a permanent government institution.
and transitioning to the work of the office. And so I just call that out because I think that's, looking at why this entity was chartered in the first place. Does this make sense? That would then be a recommendation to our board of supervisors. I don't think we as a authority can just disband.
I would, even if we had the authority of the state, it would be imprudent to do so.
Yeah, so it's I'm just flagging that I think that should be just an area of discussion. There's no time frame with that. And in my mind, I'm thinking it is tied to achieving universal broadband in the community. But so just noting that, and then the other one that had all the wording stricken was equity.
And I did that intentionally because of the creation of the
That's
affordability and accessibility office.
Yeah.
That responsibility has really moved there. Was how I had viewed that. There was a responsibility that had already moved.
So I just think that should be something that we talk about and that we,
Yeah,
we acknowledge that is, if there's consensus.
we are
do
still
that.
working with that group
Yeah.
on that topic, but the lead lies in that
I
office.
just saw, those were the 2 that I wanted to flag that I think would be worth us doing, a little more discussion about in October.
And maybe have you be the editor of this, by which I mean somebody has to accept or reject proposed changes, have discussion, and if nobody's in charge, then nobody ever accepts anything. Would you take on that role as our chair?
I will do that, and to the extent that there are issues that seem to need further discussion, I'll have those on a let's yay or nay.
Sure,
Do we do this at the next meeting?
It's great.
And I'll be the guy who takes the 2 periods out of the sentence. that
Thank you.
ended up
So is the action then to ask the office to set up a location that we can have this as a shared document?
Yes, I was staring at Mike when I said that, so he knew that's what I wanted. Thank you, Mr. Call.
You're welcome.
For facility's sake, would you like us to establish the authority membership accepting you as recommenders? That is, that they would have a status where they can recommend edits, but they do not. Any changes that they make would just show up as suggestions on your screen. And then you would have the ability to accept or reject.
It would be nice if they showed up as suggestions on everyone's.
Yeah,
screen.
everyone should go.
But everybody would be able to see it.
Okay.
My point is,
Then that's
any
fine.
change that they make. needs
No,
to
no
be
one
accepted by-
unintentionally makes changes that I didn't say do
Right.
this.
Yeah, right.
I think that's.
Yeah, I would hate to find out accidentally made a change instead of suggesting it.
Instead of suggesting it, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
I think this is the first time we've collaboratively edited a document in my time on board.
I believe you're correct.
It's like 90% of my work every day and I've never done it.
It's
Should have
about
spoken
time.
up earlier.
It's about time.
Anything else on the strategic plan?
Thank you for bringing point.
Near and dear to my heart. If you don't have a plan, what do you do?
Hope is not a plan.
The next item here is rescheduling of the 3/22/2023 meeting, and I would love some illumination as to why I want to do that.
There's a board budget meeting.
Okay,
That same
So
evening.
it's a conflict for two of our members.
Yes.
And perhaps some of the folks at home who might care to tune in or do both. So what, is there a suggestion? Is there a better time?
How about Tuesday, the 21st? I say that looking at my calendar. And stuff, and that way too far out there.
So basically, the day before,
Or Monday.
that Tuesday, the 21st works for me. I'll let everyone pull up their respective calendars. All those nodding.
It's
his
so
head.
far away, it could be dead.
Fair enough. We'll be snowbound, so.
Planning commission was in the auditorium.
It is.
Yes.
Was that the third
Yeah,
Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
Well, I moved, we,
It's a third Tuesday. Yeah, you're right. It's a third.
DDA meet
Tuesday.
third Tuesday, so there might be a conflict with the room.
What?
Yeah, I have to check on the status of the room
No.
for EDA.
Third Tuesdays are EDAs and they're scheduled for 2:40.
let me suggest this. If it's available on 3/22, then we'll do that. If it's not, then I'd like you guys to look at when the room is available.
Right.
And send us some target dates that we can all look at, so when we come back next time.
Yeah, there's still, there's.
We
time.
can. We can make a final decision on that if we didn't get 3/22.
We could always do an all virtual meeting because we have the ability to have two of those.
Sure. We could. We could. I know how to do those.
You may have to read something again.
And if that's the will of the authority, we could just do that now and then we'll be done with this.
I think we need to call it a special meeting. We could cancel the regular meeting and call it a special meeting. And then just have to stick to the agenda.
Let's see what the.
see the room
meeting-
availability.
Yeah.
I'll see if we can get the room and then we'll pick up this question in October.
Your counsel for the EDA still.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a conflict there.
Right.
Okay, so that's where we are. If we can go on 3/21, great. And that there's not a conflict for the room, and otherwise, look at some available dates in that neighborhood and come back, and look at the scene in October. Okay,
Okay.
new business. Anyone have any new business? Yes, Bill.
I'll be absent at the next meeting.
Meaning we will need a scribe.
Jason does a great job. I'll be honest, I volunteer him. He laughs.
Hearing no opposition, that motion unanimously carries. Will you be here at the next meeting, Jason?
I will be here at the next meeting, yes.
That would be great. Thank you, Bill. Any other new business?
No.
Well, then, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for attending.
Well done, getting a hybrid meeting going.
This is Kim Gardner. She
Yes,
is
the
she is a
fantastic
grant savant and budgeteer